Welcome back to Pro News, and today we are talking about the XF16-50mm from Fujifilm. If you're a Fuji shooter, I'm sure that you heard about the XF18-55 kit lens that Fuji released quite a while ago. Now, this lens was really renowned to be a great kit lens and not your usual kit lens that sacrifices a lot in terms of image quality, but really provided users with a very usable lens that was at the same time quite affordable. So this lens, which will be the replacement of the XF18-55, so now 16-50, you gain pretty much 2mm on the wide range and you lose a bit on the longer focal. So does it live up to the expectations? Well, let's find out. Well, first, when it comes to the design and the build of the lens, well, the lens adopts the new design of the Fujifilm lenses, which is a bit more modern compared to the previous ones. You pretty much have aperture ring that is not marked because this is a variable aperture, right? From 2.8 to 4.8, 2.8 at the wider range, 16mm, to 4.8 when it comes to around 50mm. You also have a zoom ring, and it's important to notice that this lens is an internal zoom, which is great for people who want to, who are using this lens for video, because you will not necessarily have to rebalance. Let's say you're using a gimbal, you don't need to rebalance anything with this lens, which is not the case if you use the 18-55 or the 16-55, because they extend, right? This one does not extend, so that's a huge plus if you're in the need of this kind of lens. In terms of feeling, I would say that the aperture ring itself feels quite solid, and it doesn't feel like you can touch it just by mistake, right? So it feels like it's a lens that it's well built. You also have a switch on the side of a lens that basically allow you to switch from automatic aperture to manual aperture. And that's pretty much what we've seen on other lenses from Fuji, like the 70-300 or other variable aperture lenses in their lineup. Now, it's important to notice that the XF16-50mm from Fuji has weather sealing, which was not the case on the 18-55. And that is a huge plus for people who really want to have a lens where they can just go wherever they want, don't think about dust, don't think about humidity, etc. They can just shoot with it. So that's a huge plus on this lens. And it's kind of a shame, in my opinion, that the XT50 that Fujifilm has released does not have the weather sealing, because if you pair both of those, even if your lens has weather sealing and the XT50 doesn't, you risk to have some particle of dust or humidity enter your camera and go onto your sensor. So it's kind of a shame that they do not include it on the XT50. Now, in terms of image quality, well, this lens doesn't disappoint, because at 16mm, if you go at 2.8, you already have a very sharp image in the center with some small lack of sharpness in the corners. But as soon as you go to f4, the whole image is sharp on the whole frame, right? And that is great for this lens, because typically people will use it on this kind of range, right? If you want the 2.8 to have a little bit blurry effect, anyway, the corners don't really matter if you want them to be sharp, but at f4 you already have a sharp image, right? So that's great to see. And at 50mm, well, at f4.8, you can see that the corners are slightly lack a bit of sharpness, but honestly, this is barely noticeable. It's only noticeable if you try to pixel peep. So overall, the image quality here in terms of sharpness is really good for such a kit lens, zoom lens, right? And not only it is good in terms of sharpness, but you have barely any chromatic aberration. It's very well controlled. The contrasts also work really well. And the colors that are produced by this lens is really comparable to their new generation lenses. And paired with this really useful focal range, right? Because 16mm, which is basically your 24mm equivalent on full frame, as well as your 50mm, which is the 75 equivalent on 35mm, right, cameras. It's really really useful and versatile focal length range. You basically, if you bring this on your travel, I can see myself bringing just this lens, and have everything that I need, right? You can still focus on the 16mm if you want to have some low light capabilities at f2.8, and at 50mm you can still get some decent portraits with some decent blurred background. You won't have a huge amount of bokeh and huge amount of separation with your background because it's f4.8. Not like, let's say the 50mm f1.2, right? That's a bit different, but you can still get some good and decent results with this lens. Now, what doesn't it not feature though? Well, it does not feature image stabilization, right? So if you plan on using this lens on a body that does not have image stabilization, then that might be a minus point for you. That might be something that you want to consider, and maybe instead of getting this one, getting the 16-80 or the 18-55, because both of those actually feature it. So overall, I would say that this lens, the 16-50, is a really strong successor to the 18-55. Now you do lose image stabilization, but you do gain weather resistance, which is, I think, a plus in my opinion, because anyway, if you really want to stabilize your footage, you can use gimbals, or you can just, count on the image stabilization that you have on your Fuji camera as well. But for me, weather resistance is something that is way more important for my needs, right? Because I shoot in different varying kind of conditions, and sometimes it can rain, sometimes it can be near the ocean, sometimes it can be very dusty, and I'd rather have a lens that I can bring anywhere with me and then stabilize it afterwards than a lens that I feel that I'm worried that I won't be able to use on the day because it might rain or there might be dust or humidity, etc. Let us know down in the comment what you think about this lens, and if you are thinking about buying it. Thank you for watching Pro News, and if you've missed it, check out our review of the Fujifilm X-T50.